Ladies and gentlemen, international journalist and broadcaster, Mr. Nick Gowing.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me back. It's my third visit to SAGIA and to the Competitiveness Forum, so I'm delighted to be here and delighted to see so many of you here on the second day, which is always a judge of how a conference is going, and it's filled right to the back, which is fantastic. This is about something which is looming and developing very quickly. We are talking for the next 45 minutes about the revolutions of energy, new opportunities towards a sustainable future. Let me right from the get-go, picking up from what John has talked about the new digital environment and so on. Use your smartphones and your tablets. Let me put up the address here to communicate with me for the next 45 minutes about the things which are on your mind, which is really very important. It's a great way of knowing what's coming to your thoughts as you hear the panelists. I've just come from Davos, and I'd like to share with you for the next minute and a half the kind of reflections I heard, particularly behind closed doors, about the way things are moving in the energy field. To give you an idea of what is changing after COP21 in Paris, I heard one leading senior executive say, and I would say he was a skeptic in this field, he said, "We are now in a direction that is clear and unambiguous. We know where we are, we've just got to get on with it." And I don't think we would have heard that kind of language from this particular person before COP21. We're talking about a big change, and I would report to you, I heard one chief executive say, companies have not really internalized the implications now of COP21 for sustainable energy and for the fossil fuel and the carbonized business. I heard one senior executive report how just after the Paris Agreement, he had been phoned by a leading investor who said that putting money into carbon assets is now a lot riskier. And of course, you've had the governor of the Bank of England warning about the danger of stranded assets in the carbon business as well. And I think what's remarkable is the way the numbers are stacking up now. There was a very senior figure who talked of now there being 50% sustainables in the energy mix. You wouldn't have predicted that a couple of years ago. And I heard one other senior executive say that decarbonization is now firmly embedded in today's policy and political system. It is there and it's there to stay. Now we've just got to get on with it. And another one saying this is a big turning point and everyone's got to get it. This is about new business opportunities, and that has to be gripped at high speed. So that's what was being discussed and what the reflections were in Davos. I don't think some of that language would have been on the agenda literally 6 weeks earlier at Davos. It happened before COP21, but that's the kind of reflections that I heard last week. And I have to say it again, all of them were off the record, so I can't tell you who said all of that. Now, let me introduce our panel. First of all, we've got John Rice, who's Vice Chairman of General Electric, who you've just been listening to. We've got David Welch, who is Senior Vice President and Regional President for Europe, for Africa and the Middle East of Bechtel, lives in Dubai at the moment, formerly of the State Department, the US State Department. Frédéric Abbal, Executive Vice President, Energy, Business and Middle East and Africa Operations for Schneider Electric. And Omar Al-Madhi, Senior Managing Director and member of the board for Abdul, Latif, Jameel Ventures. I'm going to put the same question to all four of you. Quick answers, please. Is there a realization of how profound the impact of COP21 is now likely to be on business and political decisions? John?
I think there is. I think from our perspective, the fact that there is a new set of standards and something that every country in the world, or most of the countries in the world, can see and embrace is a very important outcome. But I also think that there are carbon-based technologies which are still going to matter for a long, long time. You know, the countries I visit have no way home if the only power generation they add is renewable. So there will have to be a mix and a portfolio of power generation choices for the foreseeable future, in my view.
In that 50-50 figure from the International Energy Agency, though, no one's saying the coal is going down. It's talking about the new developments elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. But I look at Indonesia. Jokowi has come in and announced that he's going to add 35 gigawatts of new power by 2020, and the vast majority of that will be carbon-based technologies. It has to be.
David Welch, the same question. Is there a realization of how profound the impact of COP21 is likely to be on business and political decisions now on energy?
Well, I would say that we're a construction company, so we go with what our clients are looking for. But a partial answer to your question would be sure. We see now, particularly in an environment like this one out here, where climate is such an important factor, we see a lot more emphasis on energy standards in buildings, LEED certification, quality measurement of the asset so that you measure its efficiency both in an energy sense and in a cost sense. So, you know, for the new projects, it's creeping in.
Creeping, only creeping.
Well, we work in all parts of the world, and it's different in some parts than in others. In the more developed economies, where the electricity market, for example, which is the big demand pool out here, it's quite a bit different. You find the entire range of technologies still being used. But in the less developed markets, where, you know, in some cases there isn't electricity, I believe that they'll be looking at fossil fuels for some time, simply because that's the fastest way to meet demand growth.
Frédéric, your view, is there a realization of how profound COP21 is likely to be now?
Well, actually, the business reality that we are witnessing today is a massive development of renewable energy, whether they are solar, whether they are wind, which are today the most cost-effective one. The second part that we are witnessing on the market is the fact that more and more customers would like to have the freedom to choose the way they are using the energy, whether they use it by themselves, meaning generating the energy by themselves, whether they want to use it from the grid. So this is bringing a massive change, complete disruption in the way the energy was delivered before, which was a more top-down way of delivering the energy. Now it's more a completely interconnected, digitalized world we are entering in. So is the COP21 the factor of starting this? I don't know. I already witnessed that since many years, starting from the US, starting from Germany, starting in Middle East and Saudi especially is very much advanced in this kind of technology because they understand that they can grab one or two generations ahead of the others. And this is the reality we are facing today. So if you ask me whether I believe there is a change moving on, oh yes, a big one.
I think probably COP21 is confirmation of a direction of travel, of putting extra energy into political energy. Right, Omar.
Our belief is that until it's actually reflected in national regulations, it's going to be really difficult to measure the amount of potential impact that it would have. Ultimately, for companies and for consumers, it all boils down to cost, the cost they're paying per unit of electricity or power.
But my question, though, remains, is there a realization of how profound the impact is now? We've just heard from Frédéric about what the public is now expecting.
I think it's definitely important in the public eye and in the government eye, but I also believe it's viewed as an opportunity to develop new industries in this part of the world and renewable energy.
Let me ask again, all of you, does everyone get this, though? Do you feel there are still resistances out there, the flat earthers, to environment, whether in business or in politics, given that their next generation is demanding much more sustainable, renewable energy sources? John?
No, we're not confused. For the last 10 years, we've averaged $1.5 billion a year of investment in energy efficiency and renewables. We have the number one or number two, depending on how you measure it, wind business in the world. But there is, tension between the cost of doing this and how you provide everything else you need to provide in a society. So I think the aspiration is right and well recognized, but you do have to pay for it. I mean, what Omar suggests, I think, is right. tighter budgets, tougher economies. There's a funding thing that goes with that. So the real test is how much are people willing to pay for, right? Will you pay more for electricity that's generated from wind or the sun than you do from coal?
Just picking up on Frédéric's point, the fact is the public may be ahead of the politicians and in some cases business. Is that how you're seeing it, David?
Frédéric or me? Well, for sure. I mean, my daughters, who are in their mid-20s, they don't drive a car to work. They either walk or they take public transport. And our employees, we have nearly 50,000 people working in Bechtel all over the globe, and for every age group now, increasingly, we see sort of a demand that we figure out a way to do it better too. And I think that, after all, we're a construction company, so we're building things. We're not picking the technology. We're not telling the customer exactly what kind of boiler to buy. But we are looking on behalf of the customer at the efficiency of operation of the asset. This concept of life cycle cost is very, very important to our clients. I wish, however, when they were tendering that they would they would treat our bids more favorably when we look at that as an aspect. I think our audience here, especially in the kingdom, needs to look at when it's going out for public procurements in this sector, that they would realize that that life cycle cost is a real advantage to them.
But do you recognize that quote I gave of someone who, from a very leading company, who phoned and said, now it's going to be much riskier putting money into carbon assets?
It sounds like an investor. And there are indeed some in the United States in particular that I know of who have new protocols for how they manage their investments. Again, that's not up to us as a business. We have built every single kind of power generation facility, including a couple of the largest solar facilities in the United States. And I think those investors were energized by the prospect. They'll have to look at whether this works for the utilities that are buying the power and for the citizens that are benefiting from it.
Frédéric, again, coming back to this issue of does everyone get it? Or are there still flat earthers out there clinging to the belief that the old way is still the best way?
Well, actually, you are on the point. You are on the point. I think we are in a massive change management process. So when you were saying, okay, do we have any roadblock resistance? Of course we have. But we have, first of all, a technical, pragmatic resistance that everything which was built so far was top down, kind of monolith way of doing and flowing the energy. Now it's completely changing. This model has completely blasted. Energy is everywhere. You can produce, you can generate energy. Back to your point, do I believe that it's more risky to put money in carbon or whatever investment? No. It depends what you are doing with this one. If you are creating a micro generation, a microgrid to flow your city, your whatever area, your factory, your industry, it's completely different than before. So I would say that today we are ahead of a change, a big change management. It's a technological change as a start. And thinking we are going to change this in 2 seconds is going to be a bit complex to achieve, because there is so many investment, utilities have invested so much, whatever generation company has invested so much. This has to move from a non-flexible way of generating energy, bringing energy from the generation to the end user, to a flexible one, and this will take time.
Omar, again, flat earthers, here in Saudi Arabia, we know what's been very clearly declared transformation, but driven as much by the lower oil prices. But the McKinsey report talks about the danger of always being reactive to changes, as opposed to seeing the inevitability of a direction of travel, which is where it seems to me that COP21 has clearly signaled the world needs to go and wants to go.
I think from a Saudi perspective, we definitely have been very reactive in the past. I'm actually, though, for the first time, looking forward really to what's going on in government right now. And I believe what's sparking the transformation might be reactive, but I hope and I believe that there is a real opportunity for being proactive in the future, regardless of whether oil prices remain at the current levels or increase again. Because we've continuously had this, let's call it a masked blessing of high oil prices, which have made the problem not so much of a burning platform for us as a country. But I think on the energy side, what's also important is beyond just supply management, demand management. There's a culture, unfortunately, of wasting energy in this country, and definitely the archaic thinking in terms of we are entitled to cheap energy in order to run our businesses, in order to be profitable and to drive economic growth in the country does exist. I think the recent changes in electricity and in energy prices across the board for businesses as well as individuals was a positive move. We've seen a lot of negative backlash from it as well from the business community. However, in the long run, it's very important because we cannot always manage the problem by increasing supply. We have to also work on decreasing the demand for energy and on including renewable sources of energy, where even if you waste a little bit, it's better than wasting oil.
Now, can I remind you, please use that, your smartphone, your tablet. You've got the questions. I don't have any questions here at the moment, and I'll come to you as well. Does anyone want to come in at the moment?
Yeah.
Please. It's very dark out there. Please, let's get the microphone in, because I'd like you to come in much sooner, because there may be things on your agenda. You're from India. Well, you could be from many other countries.
An Indian-born Australian citizen, permanent resident of Singapore.
Well, that's why I asked the question. You see, I knew the answer to the question, which is why I asked it.
But,
who are you representing today?
I'm representing the University of California, Los Angeles. Pavan Gantok is my name. I'd like to request Nick to try and shift the discussion a bit to what would it take to make solar energy storage realistic, to then change the cost equation that we're so far taught.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who knows about
So the Tesla
solar
power
storage,
pack,
as well as up on the platform? Because there may be an expert in solar storage. Because that is where I was taking the discussion.
well, I'm glad you. Good.
About scaling up and the demand and the engineering challenge. There's clearly a demand there. Battery storage is one of the many issues. But first of all, the technological capability at the moment, John and David and Frédéric, the technological capability, but then the ability to scale up. Because in India, Modi has announced 100 gig of solar panels, but no one's sure where the solar panels are going to come from. John.
Well, exactly. Where are they going to come from and where are you going to put them in a country where getting a small piece of land is hard? And the amount of land you'd need for 100 gigawatts of solar is extremely hard. So, you know, this really question comes down to the trade-offs that you make. You need storage at grid scale in order to make a lot of this work. You also need...
Is that there yet?
Not yet. It's getting there.
Is it imminent?
Costs are coming down. I don't know enough to say it's imminent, but we're making progress. I mean, you know, 15 years ago, wind turbines were generating power at 20 or 25 cents a kilowatt, and today it's 5 or 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt and headed lower. So this technology will get there over some period of time. I think the question is how much, how soon, but it's all a bunch of trade-offs, right? These are, the intermittency of renewables will require you to make other investments in transmission and distribution to accommodate that. If you're prepared to make those investments and make those trade-offs, then you will go faster. If you're not prepared to make those investments and trade-offs, you'll go slower. I think that's true in every country.
Frédéric, where's the science at the moment, given that you work with Schneider Electric?
Yeah, on storage or on the rest? I would say that storage is a solution to lean the generation compared to the consumption, compared to the needs. Okay, if you normally you produce solar business when there is a sun, and when there is no sun, it's less effective, let's say. So you need to store. Okay, you have other solutions. You have also other solutions that are actually mature. Now, being back on the topic of the solar business, it's exactly like 20 years ago when we were at solar storage. When we were talking 20 years ago about solar business, we are just saying, guys, you know, it's not very much, it's not cost effective. And today, we start to somewhere, some places in the planet, being at par compared to other energies. So 20 years. We started now the race regarding the the storage business. There are a lot of technology, of course, batteries, but also, you know, hydrogen generation that you can re-inject in the gas, etc. At the end of the day, today, those technologies are existing, but they are not cost effective. So we need to go for this cost. Now, does it prevent us to move to this flexible grid, flexible energy? No, because we have everything already. We don't need storage so far.
But technically, I mean, using John's, I think you used the word imminent, John.
Technically,
it's somewhere down the track.
Technically, today we have solutions. They are not cost effective. To answer your question.
But in 5 years, you think that might happen? It's that kind of time scale. Omar, you're saying no.
5 years might be a bit too aggressive. I think the storage side of the solar energy value chain is the last paradigm shift that's required to really unlock the potential. We as Abdul Latif Jameel Group have funded a lab at MIT called the Jameel World Water and Food Security Lab. And at MIT, there exists cutting edge technology observations in terms of storage. One of the most applicable ones for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which we really have a lot of faith in, is molten salt, because that could unlock a huge potential in applying renewable energy for desalination, which is one of the huge consumers of oil in this country. So the paradigm shift, I'm not sure whether it's going to be in 5 years. The technologies are there, as everyone mentioned, the cost element. Currently, it really makes it prohibitively high in terms of competing with fossil fuels. So unless you have incentive programs that are driven by government organizations to cover that gap, it's going to be a bit longer, I believe.
Picking up on John's point with reference to India, particularly the issue of just land acquisition and land rights, do you have that same problem in the desert here? Of if you wanted to put up farms for PV 70 square kilometers, can you do it here?
I think we're a country that's endowed with 2.2 million square kilometers of land, albeit a big chunk of it is in the desert. For us, I think the availability of land per se is not the issue. The availability of the right type of land, where you have the right climate conditions, where you have less dust, etc., which all have a negative impact on solar, is going to be the issue. Overall, the region has one of the highest irradiation levels across the globe. So we're a prime location for solar, and I believe the kingdom and the rest of the region, we can be energy leaders in terms of providing reliable energy to the world in a solar age, the same way we are energy leaders in a fossil fuel age.
Can you imagine an overlap here and a transition which is going from oil underground to solar overground, and that being a significant provision from the Saudi Arabian economy?
It's definitely, I think, something that's going to happen. I think it's a matter of time. And I think the only issue with...
Everyone keeps saying a matter of time. What kind of time are we talking about?
I'm honestly not sure, but I think there are more pressing issues that are on a more critical economic viability sense for the kingdom. But I think it's happening. I think the only element that's missing right now in the kingdom is a proper regulatory framework, an umbrella organization that manages the whole renewable sector. Right. That doesn't exist yet, and I think it's a critical time, given where current prices are for oil, to actually do that.
Does anyone else want to come in at the moment? Raise that. 2 hands here, 3 hands here. Let's get the microphones across. But before I come to you, that question I had earlier, scaling up. If there is now more public demand and public expectation, if there is now a political framework in most nations from COP21, the ability to scale up on the engineering side, on the building side, and so on. David?
Yeah, well, it's an engineering and construction issue. In deference to anyone from India in the audience, India is not the only place with land management issues. If you have an endangered species in a place where you're seeking to put 180,000 heliostats to direct sunlight to heat a turbine, and you can't get access to the last bit of land to scale it up to 400 megawatts, because of regulation, you're not going to get that.
But that's not unique to sustainable power. It's the same for commodity extraction.
Well, for solar arrays, you need a lot of land. So that is a problem unique to land. The other one that we see in another renewable is hydro. Financing of hydro projects has become constrained by essentially political decision, because it can affect people in an area where the water will fill in behind a dam. And yet in some places in the world, hydro projects are a really logical solution.
Scaling up, Frédéric.
Well, first thing, as I was saying before, the flexibility of the delivery model is at stake. And to scale up, first of all, we need devices that are capable to interconnect together. If we don't have this network interconnected, digitalized, we will never get there. So actually, and this is why I'm saying that the kingdom is very much advanced. They are moving that direction in their distribution network, connecting all the substations in order to make it happen. If you want to make something happen when you are having this level of flexibility, you need to remotely pilot, you need to remotely understand what is happening on your devices, on your grid, on your generation. And this is let's say the number one. The number two, I'm back to your point regarding energy efficiency. We have a trend to focus ourselves very much before the meter. We need to go beyond this meter because there is a lot to do in energy efficiency in this part of the world, but also elsewhere. And this is something that also can be interconnected. And as soon as we get the information, bringing this information to the end user, to the customer that is going to be interested to know what is his profile in terms of energy consumption, then everything connected, we will do something. Again, scalability is moving along with digitization.
John, again, that business of scaling up, given what GE does, we've seen in China a surplus of PV cells produced, flooding the market.
You know, this is a hard question to answer. If I think about our wind business, we bought our wind business out of Enron's Chapter 11 in 2003. In the first 5 years, our customers and the government in China wanted nothing to do with this wind business. Over the next 5 years, they built the biggest wind market in the world. Okay? Today, your eyes still burn and your throat still hurts when you're in Beijing, right? This is a massive problem, and it's hard to predict, does it happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, over what period of time? It will move forward, but the idea that COP21 has the answer, I mean, I don't think...
But it provided the framework.
It provides a good framework, but we also live in a world, as McKinsey has reported on separately, where there's a $1 trillion a year underinvestment in infrastructure. So when you add now new layers of investment on top of that, which is what a lot of this brings with it, you're talking about an even bigger problem for countries and companies to solve. So I'm not at all diminishing the significance of COP21, but there are some very tough choices that need to be made along the way in order for us to really make progress here.
Okay, well, let me try the question in a different way. Has COP21 meant that when it comes to your strategic planning, you have a much clearer, definite, more confidence-building framework into which you can then address the developments and how you're going to produce product and put things into the market?
If that question is being directed to me, I think it reinforces what we're already doing in terms of focusing on energy efficiency.
Gives you more confidence.
We have the largest hydro business now. We have one of the largest wind businesses, and we're full steam ahead. But I think until you have a carbon cost everywhere, you're really not going to get at the kind of economic trade-offs you need to have to move out of carbon-producing technologies and put much more into non-carbon.
I heard voices in Davos who were against carbon pricing, who are now saying it's inevitable, even if it starts low.
Well, I think that's, whether it's a tax or some kind of a cap-and-trade system, to really move the ball, you're going to have something like that, and not just in a handful of countries, because you have it in a few places today, but you're going to need it everywhere, and I don't see that happening short-term.
All right, got 15 minutes to run. I'll get as many voices as possible from number 3. Who's got the mic? It's coming to you in a moment. It's behind you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, just 2 points. One is, I think we concentrate a lot about availability of energy resources. I think we should concentrate more on efficient use. We don't have to consume energy, even if it was free, because there are other side effects. I think environmentally designed energy efficient systems, including urban planning, is very critical to saving the world from not only energy shortage, but also what the gentleman here said about pollution and carbon and other things, including increasing heat of the planet. My other issue is about solar cells. In this country, we have a problem with dust, and cleaning solar panels will consume water, which is much more pressing issue for us. And I think if you had to choose, if anyone had to choose between the two, we rather conserve water.
Right. Could you move it to the gentleman to your left? Let me just tell you that I shared a platform with the Deputy Mayor of Oslo, who's a Green member, and she was saying that Oslo is now becoming a car-free city, including free of electric cars.
Terrific panel. I'm just a bystander in this space, but from what I read, and I read a lot.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Jim Phillips, Chairman CEO of Nanomec. If you look at the statistics alone, now trillions have been spent in alternative energy. We're still talking about it. And after all those trillions, we're still at about 95% fossil fuel-based energy, mostly because energy is based on surge power. And so you're talking about storage and so forth, and the storage is a long way off from everything that's published to provide the kind of surge power for cities, and to run cities, and to run the municipalities that require real electricity. So I guess the question is just, where are you on this? I mean, it looks to me like it's at the end of the day, all this alternative energy, the trillions that have been spent, the hundreds and hundreds of billions, for instance, in the United States, have resulted in a 1% increase in alternative energy in terms of powering typical use in electricity.
All right, you sound quite weary about the argument.
Well, I'm getting tired of spending the money as a taxpayer, and it's not really going anywhere. And the other thing is on the science side, fossil fuels. I mean, they're so much cleaner. They're to the 80% cleaner today than they were just 20 years ago. I mean, things like nanotechnology that take out the ZDDP, the zinc phosphorus, and things like that, and create even more performance. Less is more with fossil fuels. So we don't ever hear anything about how we've cleaned up coal, we've cleaned up fossil fuels, but we hear a lot about this alternative energy that's costing trillions of dollars and resulting in very little.
Let me be quite clear. You say 95%. I thought the IEA had figures showing that the level of carbon-produced energy in the world was reducing significantly as part of the mix to around 50%. Anyway, do you want to pick up on the points that came there, Frédéric?
Well, no other comment than I can just agree. One thing I would like to add, we talk about storage, we should also talk about demand management. How we are, shaving, how we can switch off big processes in order to avoid having this surge, this peak energy that is, at the end of the day, putting the level of generation very high, sometimes 100 giga, and the average is 50. I mean, I'm talking about France that I know better. I think this is very, very close to other countries in the area. So let's say this demand side management is something that we can activate, actually much faster than any kind of storage. But here we'll need support regarding the regulation, regarding the law, regarding the way we are capable to sell, to price this negawatt, which is the negative watt in front of the megawatt. This is something that is very much achievable, very close to what we can do, but that we cannot touch for the moment due to some issue. I'm not talking of this country, I'm talking everywhere. David. Regulation.
Just an observation that touches upon something the gentleman from our Saudi friend mentioned, and that is you have to use water for certain things. Typically when people think of the kingdom, they think it has a lot of oil and has a lot of sunshine, and it doesn't have much water. There's another thing that Saudi Arabia has been doing for many years now, and quite successfully, and that is to develop the a more diversified economy and the industrial infrastructure in particular. We've worked with the Royal Commission for many years at Jubail. And there, I can assure you, the planning of the infrastructure spread that will support investment of companies in that area is very important to this economy, is done with an eye to what happens with industrial power, feedstock for the industries, and industrial water. Those have to be rigorously looked at and managed so that they're cost effective for the investors. And to Saudi Arabia's credit, they've done a very, very good job of that over the years. And now that model is being used elsewhere in the economic cities, in the development of the mineral cities up north, so that diversification, which is a very important push in the economy, is done responsibly as it can.
John, can you see that, are you developing self-cleaning solar cells?
Not yet, not yet. But I think the point about renewables and how the U.S. didn't necessarily handle this properly is worth talking about for a second, because it applies to every government. In the U.S., there was a production tax credit that was turned on and turned off over the course of about 10 years, every year or two. So investors didn't have much clarity about whether it was going to be a long-term or a short-term thing. At the end of all this, what happened is the U.S. spent about $20 billion to incent companies to invest in wind, and probably could have gotten twice as much for half of that investment if they'd said, okay, here's your program, it's going to last 6 years, there's going to be a sunset, and when it's done, it's done. Now, in that political system, making those long-term commitments is really hard, but there are other systems where it's not as hard. And when some of the comments I made before about the need for clarity in the regulatory world, that's exactly what we're talking about. You don't have to incentivize or subsidize stuff forever, but if you want people to invest and bring costs down, give them a little bit of time, let them know exactly what the running rules are going to be, and when it's over, it's over.
Certainly in Britain, the sustainability business has been decimated because since the election last year, the government decided to withdraw virtually all the subsidies. It's left 30,000 people probably without work in the solar business. Yeah. Even if subsidies were not the way to go, that was the business basis on which they went ahead with their plans, and it's decimated, as I say. Right, numbers 1 and 2, let's get both of you in. We've got 8 minutes to run, so let me go to number 1 at the back first. Can you keep your remarks reasonably short, please?
Hi, Nick. My name is Abbal, entrepreneur from Dubai. I've been living in Saudi for 18 years. Last 3 years, moved to Dubai. I just would like to share a few information since you mentioned solar energy and the storing of energy. We have one of our international airport in India, in Kerala, where the whole operation of the airport is on solar energy. Recently, Al Jazeera also broadcasted that the complete airport, and also in Kerala especially, we have out of a year, we have half of the year is full of rain. We don't have the sunlight, but still we are able to store the energy and operate the airport. And also in my own house, we have water heaters, everything runs on solar power. So we here in Saudi, we have a fantastic opportunity. We have 50 degrees Celsius sunlight, and I think we have tremendous opportunity here.
So what's the message?
I would like to invite entrepreneurs from Saudi to visit India, especially Kerala, the airport, what I mentioned, and then invest in solar energy in Saudi.
All right. Could I just check, do the landing lights come on at night?
Yeah, sure.
That's good. Right.
That was a good question.
Okay, please, two.
Yes, I am Bechtel from Al Faisal University. I would like to ask you about transmitting electricity wirelessly. In the past, I read about a project between Germany and Algeria where they will produce the energy in the desert of Algeria through the solar cells and then transmitting it to Germany wirelessly. What progress on that idea has been made?
Wireless electricity. Schneider.
I'm going to Schneider for that.
Well, I think that the global trend is more to produce closer where you have the consumption than the reverse. To be clear, I also know that in the same country that you are naming, which is Germany, in the northern part of Germany, you have the wind farm, and in the southern part of Germany, you have the industrial setup, and this is very difficult to bring the energy from northern to southern because they don't have the transmission line. So again, the point is really, I think the change which is running today is more produce energy as close as you consume it, and not, again, the top-down approach, which is a bit of the old thing.
Any other answers? I've got other questions to go to. David, John? Oh, no, okay. Right, let's go there first, please. Keep your questions reasonably short, please. I've got 5 minutes left.
My name is Abdul Abeid. My question is very brief. We read recently some reports showing that the solar energy will be very competitive with the oil and fossil type of energy. The question, how soon do you see this is coming? They mentioned around 2030. So how soon do you see that?
How soon do you see it? Another question here, please. 3.
Yes, Thamer Al-Abadi from Colleges of Excellence. To me, new opportunities mean creating new industries, meaning that actually opportunities for employment for youth and also creating small and medium enterprises. How actually, what's the future for those? Thank you.
In other words, it's not down to you as the kind of legacy companies, it's down to the startups. Omar, do you see that as the way forward here?
I think it's going to be a mix. Ultimately, the technology development from a cost perspective is prohibitively high for the SMEs. So that's going to probably come from the leading academic institutions and the very large multinationals. However, the implementation of the ancillary and complementary services and technologies around that will probably be SME driven, and that will create jobs in research, create jobs in construction. The thing I'm not too sure about though is whether these are really new jobs or they're replacing jobs on the conventional energy side. However, I'd like to, if you allow me, comment on the price. It's a fact of the matter now that the top 2 companies that bid for the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid solar park in Dubai, which is 250 megawatts solar development, were 2 Saudi companies, Aqua Power and Latif Jameel. And the price that actually ultimately won, and the 2 prices were actually very close to each other, was 4.6 US cents per kilowatt hour, which is more or less equivalent to the price of retail energy in the kingdom, maybe not as low as the lowest bracket of residential energy in the kingdom. So I think we're already there. It's a matter of scale, number one, and it's a matter of solving some other issues that have to do with the full energy cycle across the full 24 hours, so storage.
Let me ask all 3 of you that question then about who's going to be leading the move into sustainable energy. Is it the big companies, 3 of them represented on the platform here, or is it going to be new startups? Given the way the new ecosystem of business is changing so fast. Frédéric?
Well, I think that the key for the success will be to, let's say, merge those startups coming with a lot of digitized innovation with big companies.
Venture, and venture capital funding.
Yes, I think, well, not only funding, but also from the technology point of view, merging things together. Meaning, in those, like you say, big companies, we have 100 years of cumulative experience. So the knowledge that we have, this is something that has to be leveraged, and that could be leveraged by those small and startups that we can see for the moment in the US, but not only in the US, almost everywhere. So I think it's not one or the other. I think it's more a mix. And the key of the success is how could we leverage those small entities, bring innovation in other big entities, and leverage those small by the big one, which is sometimes the difficult equation when we are a big company to leverage those innovative ones.
David and John, 2 very significantly long-established corporations. Do you feel under pressure?
No. If you have the right regulatory structure, if the costs are appealing to the client, including over the life cycle of the asset, if the local system can support it, and every electricity infrastructure market is different in that respect, then these things are constructible and can be done, in my judgment, efficiently. Those are a lot of things that have to come together, but there may be some promise that people will be more willing to finance them because they see that they can be replicated and you can build a new industry in that respect. It's complicated to bring all those things together, and it's only happening regularly in a few places. We're all quite interested to watch those figures that Omar gave, because that is clearly setting a standard that is not just regional, it's global, my judgment. And I know only the EPC side of that business, and we find that a very competitive environment right now. We'd like to get into it, but it's not happening as many places because those factors aren't all coming together.
John.
I think it's going to be a combination. I think that good ideas and innovation will come from everywhere in this world, and we've got to be open to it. We've got to be working with big companies and small companies and entrepreneurs and startups and supporting and funding them where it makes sense. And I think that's a fundamentally different approach for GE in the 21st century than it might have been for GE in the 20th century.
And do you have to be smarter and even more agile?
Totally. And you have to kill projects quickly if they're not working. You have to move. Your agility is a great term for it. If you're stuck in what worked yesterday, you may be missing the boat entirely.
Well, look, let me thank you. We have to move on, but let me just give you one personal reflection. I'm amazed at the level of language that we're seeing from business now. I chaired part of the Business for Climate Change Summit in Paris in May of last year, when a watershed moment when suddenly business made it clear that they saw money and growth in sustainability. I don't think that conversation would have happened even publicly a few months earlier. This is moving amazingly quickly, and I say that as someone who watches this all the time, but doesn't have any money in the system to watch to see how it's going, because what you can feel is a significant change in psyche among those who, a couple of years ago, were really quite skeptical on this issue. Can I thank you all very much indeed. We now move on. I'm going to be joined by Gopal Krishnan, who until very recently was Executive Director at Tata, and I'm joining him over there. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Really nice. Thank you very much.